Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of English Podcasts with Aiza and Ali. I'm Aiza, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Ali. How are you doing today, Ali?
Hey, Aiza. Hey, everyone. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. You know, I've been thinking a lot about money lately, not in a stressful way, but more like, how can I be smarter with it? And I know a lot of our listeners probably feel the same way. Today's topic is super interesting because we're going to talk about the psychology of money, which means understanding how our minds work when it comes to spending, saving, and making financial decisions. And here's the thing. We're not just going to learn about money today. We're also going to practice some really useful English vocabulary and phrases that you can use in everyday conversation. So it's like hitting two birds with one stone. That's an idiom, by the way, which means accomplishing two things at once.
Exactly. And I love that you use that expression, hitting two birds with one stone. That's such a common phrase in English. Now, before we dive deep into today's conversation, let me tell you what we discovered. We came across this fascinating interview with a financial expert named Morgan Housel. And he said something that completely changed how I think about money. He said, and I quote, "It's not about how smart you are, it's about how you behave." Isn't that powerful? The word behave here means how you act or conduct yourself. So when we talk about financial behavior, we're talking about the actions you take with your money, whether you save it, spend it impulsively, or invest it wisely.
That's so true. And honestly, it's quite liberating to hear that, isn't it? The word liberating means freeing or making you feel less restricted. Because I think many people, including myself sometimes, feel like you need to be some kind of financial genius or have studied economics to be good with money. But what Morgan is saying is that anyone can learn the right behaviors and habits. It doesn't matter if you didn't go to a fancy school or if you're not great at math. What matters is developing good habits. And habits are things you do regularly, almost without thinking about it, like brushing your teeth every morning.
So let's start with something I think everyone can relate to. And this is probably one of the biggest problems people face with money today. It's what Morgan calls the comparison trap. Now, a trap is something that catches you or tricks you, right? Like a mouse trap. So the comparison trap means you get caught in the habit of constantly comparing yourself to other people. You look at what they have, what they're wearing, where they're traveling, and you feel like you're falling behind. The phrase falling behind means not keeping up with others or not making progress as fast as you think you should. Have you ever felt this way, Ali?
Oh my goodness, all the time. And social media has made it so much worse, hasn't it? I mean, you open Instagram and there's someone showing off their new car, their vacation in the Maldives, their fancy dinner at an expensive restaurant. And for a moment, just a brief moment, you feel like your life isn't good enough. The phrase good enough is really important here. It means adequate or satisfactory, but when we're constantly bombarded with images of other people's seemingly perfect lives, and bombarded means attacked or overwhelmed with something, we start feeling like nothing we have is ever good enough. Morgan talked about this, remember? He said that back in his parents' generation, people only compared themselves to their neighbors or coworkers. But now, with social media algorithms showing us the most successful, beautiful, and wealthy people all day long, our comparison group has exploded.
Absolutely. And here's something really eye-opening that Morgan mentioned. He said, no one is thinking about you as much as you are. Let me break that down for our listeners. What he means is that we spend so much mental energy worrying about what other people think of us, but the truth is, they're too busy worrying about themselves. He shared this brilliant example from when he worked as a valet. That's someone who parks cars at a hotel or restaurant. He would see people driving up in Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and he'd think, wow, what an amazing car. But he never thought, wow, what an amazing person. Instead, he'd imagine himself driving that car and people being impressed with him. Do you see that irony there? The word irony means when something is the opposite of what you expect, or when there's a strange contradiction.
That's such a powerful realization. So basically, when you buy expensive things to impress others, you're wasting your money because people aren't even impressed with you. They're just imagining themselves with your stuff. This connects to another important concept Morgan talked about, using money as a yardstick versus using it as a tool. Now, yardstick is literally a stick used for measuring things, but here it's used metaphorically, meaning figuratively or symbolically, to represent how we measure our success against others. So when you use money as a yardstick, you're constantly asking, do I have more than that person? Is my house bigger? Is my car newer? But when you use money as a tool, you're asking, does this make my life better? Does this give me more freedom? Does this help me sleep better at night?
I love that distinction. The word distinction means a difference or separation between two things. And that distinction between a yardstick and a tool is so important. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people. Person A earns $100,000 a year, has a big house, drives a luxury car, but is constantly stressed about payments, never sees their family because they're always working, and can't sleep at night from anxiety. Person B earns $50,000 a year, lives in a modest apartment, modest means simple and not fancy, but has strong relationships, good health, time for hobbies, and feels content. The word content is really important here. It means satisfied and at peace with what you have. Morgan explained that what we're actually chasing isn't happiness, it's contentment.
Oh, this is fascinating. So let's talk about this difference between happiness and contentment, because I think it's one of the most important lessons from Morgan's work. He said something that really stuck with me. He said, and I quote, "All happiness is just the gap between expectations and reality." Let me say that slowly for our listeners who are practicing their English. All happiness is the gap between expectations and reality. Now, expectations are what you think will happen or what you hope for, and reality is what actually exists or happens. The gap is the space between these two things. So if you expect to have a mansion and a private jet, but you live in a normal apartment, that gap is huge and you'll feel miserable. But if you expect to have a safe place to live and good people around you, and you do have those things, the gap is small and you'll feel happy.
That's such a simple concept, but so profound. The word profound means very deep or meaningful. And this connects to another phrase Morgan used that I absolutely love. He said, desiring less can have the same impact as gaining more. Think about that for a second. Let's break it down. Desiring means wanting something. Impact means effect or influence. So what he's saying is that if you want fewer things, it can make you just as happy as getting more things. For example, instead of thinking, I need a brand new iPhone to be happy, you might think, my current phone works perfectly fine. By lowering your desires, or as Morgan would say, keeping your expectations in check, you actually feel wealthier because you're satisfied with what you have. The phrase keeping something in check means controlling it or not letting it get out of control.
And I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, right? Because we live in a consumer society. That means a society focused on buying and consuming things. And everywhere we turn, there's advertising telling us we need this product or that service to be happy. Instagram has become, as Morgan said, the new QVC. For those who don't know, QVC is a shopping channel on TV. So basically, social media has turned into one giant shopping mall where everyone is trying to sell you something or make you feel like you're missing out. And that brings us to another important vocabulary term, FOMO. Have you heard of FOMO, Aiza?
Yes, FOMO stands for fear of missing out. It's an acronym. That's a word formed from the first letters of other words. FOMO is that anxious feeling you get when you see other people doing something fun or exciting and you're not part of it. You feel like you're missing out on experiences, opportunities, or possessions that everyone else has. And companies use FOMO in their marketing all the time. Limited time offer, only 3 left in stock, everyone is buying this. These phrases are designed to make you feel like you need to act immediately or you'll miss out. But here's the thing, and this is what Morgan wants us to understand. most of what we think we're missing out on wouldn't actually make us happier anyway.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychology and mindset around money, but let's get practical now. What can someone actually do today to start being better with money? Morgan gave some really actionable advice. Actionable means something you can actually take action on or implement. First thing he said, check your bank account every single day. Now, I know some people avoid looking at their bank account because they're afraid of what they'll see. If you're avoiding something, it means you're deliberately staying away from it or not dealing with it. But Morgan says that this daily habit, remember, a habit is something you do regularly, takes only 10 seconds and gives you awareness of where your money is going.
That's such simple advice, but so powerful. The word awareness means knowledge or consciousness of something. When you're aware of your spending, you can't lie to yourself about it anymore. Morgan made this brilliant point that most people who are struggling financially aren't lacking intelligence, they're experiencing ignorance. Now, be careful with this word. Ignorance doesn't mean stupidity. It simply means lack of knowledge or information. You can be very intelligent but ignorant about how to manage money if you've never learned those skills. The good news is that ignorance can be fixed by education and awareness. And that's why checking your account daily is so important. It removes the ignorance about where your money is actually going.
Exactly. And the second piece of practical advice he gave was to treat savings as an expense. Now, this might sound confusing at first. An expense is something you have to pay for, like rent or food. So how can savings be an expense? Well, what Morgan means is that you should think of saving money as something mandatory, meaning required or necessary, just like paying your rent. You wouldn't say, oh, I don't feel like paying rent this month. No, you pay it because you have to. Morgan suggests you should have the same mindset about saving. Every time you get paid, automatically, that's a key word, automatically, which means without having to think about it, move a percentage of that money into savings before you spend anything else.
And he mentioned a really beautiful way to think about this. He said, every dollar you save is a piece of your future that you own. Isn't that poetic? Let me explain why this matters. When you save money, you're essentially buying freedom and options for your future self. You're buying the ability to handle emergencies, unexpected problems, or situations. You're buying the power to say no to a job you hate. You're buying time with your family. On the flip side, and on the flip side is an expression that means on the other hand or looking at it from a different perspective, every dollar of debt you have is a piece of your future that someone else owns. It's a piece of your time and energy that you've already sold to a bank or credit card company. That's a really powerful way to think about debt versus savings.
Now let's talk about investing because this is where things get really exciting. Morgan talked a lot about something called compound interest, and honestly, once you understand this concept, it's kind of mind-blowing. Let me try to explain it simply. Imagine you have $100 and you invest it. In the first year, you earn 10% return, which means you make $10 in profit. So now you have $110. But here's where it gets interesting. In the second year, you earn 10% on $110, not on $100. So you earn $11. Then in year 3, you earn 10% on $121, which is about $12. Do you see what's happening? You're earning money on your previous earnings. That's called compounding. And over many years, it becomes incredibly powerful.
Warren Buffett is the perfect example of this. He's one of the richest people in the world, worth over $100 billion. But here's the crazy part. 99% of his wealth was accumulated after his 60th birthday. Accumulated means gathered or collected over time. So even though he was already a billionaire at age 60, the vast majority of his money came after that, just from letting his investments compound over time. This teaches us something really important. It's not about being the smartest investor or having the highest returns each year. It's about being patient and consistent. The word consistent means doing something regularly and steadily without stopping.
And Morgan's parents are a great example of this too. They weren't financial experts. They didn't work on Wall Street. They didn't have any special knowledge or insider information. Insider information means secret knowledge that gives you an unfair advantage. But they had one simple strategy. They invested a small amount of money every single month for 40 years and never sold anything. Just by being patient and disciplined, they ended up with excellent returns. better than most professional investors. This is so encouraging because it means that ordinary people, people without fancy degrees or connections, can do very well with money if they just develop good behaviors.
And for those wondering what to actually invest in, Morgan keeps it super simple. He invests in something called index funds. Now, let's break down this term for our English learners. An index is basically a list or collection of things. So an index fund is a type of investment that contains a little bit of every major company in the stock market. Instead of trying to pick individual winning companies, which is really hard even for experts, you just own a tiny piece of everything. It's simple, it's boring, and it works. Morgan said the simpler your investment strategy is, the more likely you are to stick with it for the long term. And remember, sticking with it, meaning continuing to do something despite difficulties, is what really matters for compound interest to work its magic.
All right, everyone, let's pause for a moment and do a quick interactive section. This is where you, our listeners, get to practice. We're going to review some of the key vocabulary and expressions we've used today. Aiza, why don't you give them a phrase, and then we'll give listeners time to repeat it out loud.
Great idea. Okay, everyone, wherever you are right now, whether you're driving, cooking, or just relaxing, I want you to say these phrases out loud with us. Remember, speaking is one of the best ways to improve your English. Ready? First phrase, I'm falling behind. This means you feel like you're not keeping up with others. Say it with me. I'm falling behind. Now use it in a sentence. Sometimes I feel like I'm falling behind financially, but I know I can change my habits.
Excellent. Here's another one. Keep your expectations in check. This means control your expectations and don't let them get too high. Repeat. Keep your expectations in check. Now in a sentence. If I keep my expectations in check, I'll feel happier with what I have.
Love it. One more. Compound interest. Say it clearly. Compound interest. This is when your money earns money, and then that money earns even more money over time. Use it. Understanding compound interest changed how I think about saving for the future.
Perfect. And here's a really useful expression. Hit two birds with one stone. Remember, this means accomplish two things at once. Say it. Hit two birds with one stone. In a sentence, by listening to this podcast, I'm hitting two birds with one stone. I'm learning English and learning about money.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today. The phrase covered a lot of ground means we've discussed many topics or made a lot of progress. So let's do a quick recap. That means a summary or review of what we talked about. First, we learned that being good with money isn't about intelligence. It's about behavior. Anyone can learn good financial habits, regardless of their background or education.
Second, we talked about the comparison trap and how social media makes it worse. We learned that people aren't actually impressed with you when you buy expensive things. They're just imagining themselves with those things. So instead of using money as a yardstick to measure yourself against others, use it as a tool to build a better life.
Third, we discussed expectations and contentment. Remember, all happiness is the gap between expectations and reality. If you can keep your expectations in check and practice gratitude, being thankful for what you have, you'll feel wealthier even without earning more money.
Fourth, we got practical. Check your bank account daily, treat savings as a mandatory expense, and automate your savings so you don't have to rely on willpower. Even saving small amounts adds up over time. And remember, every dollar you save is a piece of your future that you own.
And finally, we learned about compound interest and the power of patience in investing. You don't need to be a genius investor, you just need to be consistent and patient. Simple strategies like investing in index funds and leaving your money alone for decades can lead to extraordinary results.
Before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought from Morgan that really resonated with me. He said, independence is the ultimate flex. Now, flex is slang for showing off, but what he means is that real wealth isn't about impressing others with fancy cars or big houses. Real wealth is having the freedom to wake up every morning and do what you want. It's having enough saved that if you lose your job or face an emergency, you'll be okay. That's true financial success.
That's beautiful, Allie. And remember, everyone listening, you have everything you need right now to start improving your relationship with money. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. What matters is that you start. Take one small action today. Maybe it's checking your bank balance. Maybe it's setting up an automatic transfer to savings. Maybe it's just thinking about your expectations and whether they're making you happy or miserable.
And of course, keep practicing your English. We hope this episode helped you learn some useful vocabulary and expressions that you can use in your everyday conversations. Learning a language is a lot like building wealth. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent and patient. Small efforts every day add up to big results over time.
So true. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We really appreciate each and every one of you who listen to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might find it helpful. Remember, teaching is one of the best ways to learn. So by sharing what you learned today, you're actually helping yourself understand it better too.
And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, you've got this. Take care, everyone.
Bye for now. See you in the next episode.